Welcome to English Discretion. On this channel, I want to share a special story with you, The Strongest Hearts. It's the story of my grandmother, who taught me that real strength lies in the things we often overlook. Not in loudness or show, but in the courage to rise with the simplicity of morning, in doing every task with sincerity, and in the kind of love that comes straight from the heart. All of that made me who I am today. If you, too, want to hear stories that truly matter, learn something meaningful, or simply feel that there's a strong heart within you, then come join me on this journey. Before the world ever asked me to be strong, my grandmother showed me what strength looked like. Not in the way people often think of it, not loud or proud or boastful, but in the quietest, most consistent ways. In the way she woke before sunrise every day, even when her knees ached. In the way she wrapped her sari with care, humming old songs under her breath. In the way she tended to every corner of our little home, treating each task like it mattered, because to her, it did. She didn't believe in shortcuts, not for work, not for people, and certainly not for love. I grew up wrapped in that love like a quilt. I didn't realize how rare that kind of love was until much later. When I was very small, before school became my world, would spend my entire day trailing after her. She called me her choti chaya, her little shadow. Whether she was grinding spices in the kitchen or watering the tulsi plant in the courtyard, I was never more than a few feet behind. She had a way of turning the mundane into magic. A pot of boiling dal became a bubbling cauldron. A neem twig for brushing teeth became a warrior's sword. The dark, cracked corners of our old house held secrets, and she, the grand matriarch of imagination, revealed them to me one by one. But it was in the quiet moments, when the work was done, and the sun was slipping below the rooftops, that our bond deepened. We'd sit together on the veranda. She'd oil my hair with coconut oil warmed over the stove. Her fingers would work gently but firmly, massaging my scalp with rhythmic movements that eased all the small worries of the day. "You must take care of your roots, Bidya," she'd say, her voice low and soothing. "Hair is like the heart. If you nourish it from the root, it will grow strong." Back then, I thought she was just talking about hair. Only later did I understand what she truly meant. She told me stories during these moments, hundreds of them. Sometimes I think her soul was made of stories. Some were fantastical, filled with witches and warriors, and others were soft and real, about girls like her, growing up in a village where education wasn't a right, but a rebellion. "Did you go to school, Dottie?" I once asked, tilting my head back to look at her. She paused, her fingers still in my hair. "Only for a little while," she said. "My father didn't think girls needed much schooling. But I used to sneak into the barn with a slate and chalk. I taught myself by listening through the windows of the boys' school." "You were like the clever girl in your stories," I said. She chuckled. "Maybe I was. Or maybe I just wanted more for the girl who'd come after me. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was the girl she meant." As I grew older, our routines evolved, but our connection never frayed. In the early years of school, when I came home, I would burst through the door, already calling out, "Dottie." My bag would land with a thump, and I'd run to find her, usually in the kitchen, rolling out chapatis, her bangles clinking against the rolling pin. She always looked up when I came in. Always. That moment, her eyes meeting mine, her smile as warm as the tawa, felt like a landing place, like home had been waiting for me all day. Sometimes I brought home stars from school, top marks on spelling tests, a teacher's praise for my neat handwriting. She'd display each small triumph like it was a crown jewel. Other times, I came home defeated, when I failed a math quiz, or when friends ignored me during recess. She never dismissed my feelings. One afternoon, after a particularly hard day, I collapsed into her lap without saying a word. She set aside the socks she was darning and ran her fingers through my hair, waiting for me to speak. "I'm just not good at anything," I muttered. Her voice didn't rise. She didn't rush to correct me. Instead, she said softly, "Do you know how the river carves the mountain?" I shook my head. "Not with strength," she said, "but with patience. Drop by drop, over time. You are still becoming. Let no one, especially not yourself, decide your worth before you're fully formed." That moment rooted itself inside me. When I reached my teenage years, our bond changed again, quieter, more mature. I had more responsibilities. School became harder. Life became louder. But still, we found our moments. In the evening, when the world slowed down, I would sit beside her, now the one massaging her tired shoulders. Her hair had turned fully silver by then, a soft halo she wore with grace. "Soon, you'll leave," she said one night. "For college, for work, for the world." I looked at her, startled. "I don't want to go far." "You must," she said firmly. "Your dreams are taller than these walls. I built them that way. But I'll miss you." She reached over and cupped my face. "And I will miss you. But everything I am, my stories, my lessons, they will go with you. They live in you now." When I did leave for college in the city, I carried a small notebook she gave me. Inside were handwritten stories, her stories. Some I had heard 100 times, others I was reading for the first time. On the inside cover, she had written, "For when the world feels too big. Remember, the strongest hearts shine the brightest." Dottie. I read that line every time I felt lost. And I did feel lost, often. The city was fast and unforgiving. People didn't smile as easily. I was just another face in a sea of ambition. But each evening, I called her. We'd talk about everything, my classes, my awkward new roommate, the way the city smelled like petrol instead of jasmine. She never told me she missed me, though I knew she did. Instead, she'd say, "Are you eating well? Are you writing? Are you being kind to yourself?" She always ended the call with, "Make me proud. I already am." Years later, after she passed away, I found myself returning again and again to the pages of that notebook. It was then I realized, she hadn't just raised me. She had prepared me. For love. For loss. For loneliness. For the strength to walk through fire with my head held high. Everything she had done, from the stories she told to the braids she tied, had been an act of teaching. A way of quietly saying, "You are worthy. You are enough. You are never alone." Even now, long after she's gone, I feel her in every act of care. When I oil my own daughter's hair, when I mend a tear in her uniform, when I tell her stories of brave girls who speak gently but walk strongly. And every time my daughter asks, "Did that really happen?" I smile and say, "Some stories are more true than real life." Part 1, The Girl Grandma Used to Be. It was strange to think of my grandmother as anything but a grandmother. She seemed timeless to me, like the earth, like rivers, like the wind, always present, always watching, always knowing. But one monsoon afternoon, as the rain whispered against our tiled roof and thunder grumbled in the distance, I found her sitting by the window, a photo in her hand. I leaned against her knee. "Who's that?" I asked, pointing at the black and white girl in the photograph. Barefoot, skinny, all elbows and cheekbones, her hair tied in two thick braids. "That," she said, her voice soft with memory, "was me." I stared. "You looked fierce." She laughed. "I had to be." That day, she told me her own story, not a tale wrapped in fantasy or animals, but the truth of a girl raised in a small village, in a time when daughters were taught silence more than strength. Her family was poor. Her father believed in hard work and tradition. Education, he said, was for boys. Girls had pots to scrub, vegetables to cut, and homes to serve. But little Kalyani, my grandmother, had other ideas. I used to wait outside the schoolhouse, she said, brushing a lock of hair behind my ear as I leaned in closer. I'd crouch by the open window, listening to the boys recite poems and tables. The teacher never saw me, or maybe he pretended not to. At night, by lantern light, she'd trace the alphabet in the dust with a stick, hiding her learning like it was contraband. One day, her older brother caught her whispering English sentences to herself. "What is your name?" she repeated under her breath. He laughed. "You're wasting your time." But she kept at it, because something in her refused to settle. When I asked her what changed, she fell silent for a moment. "My mother died when I was 11, she said. And suddenly, I wasn't just a girl, I was the woman of the house. I cooked, cleaned, sewed. No time for chalk and slates." "But didn't you want to go to school?" I asked. "I did," she said. "And I still do." She smiled at me then, soft, wistful. "That's why I told you all those stories. Because if I couldn't go, I'd make sure you would. I planted my dreams in you, Bidya. And you've made them grow." Part 2, The Storm in the City. When I left home for university, I carried her strength like a secret under my skin. But strength, I soon learned, is not always enough. College was everything I'd dreamed of, and everything I feared. The city was massive, unforgiving. Everyone seemed to know who they were, what they wanted. Their clothes were sleek, their accents polished, their parents powerful. I arrived with a stitched salwar kameez, a notebook full of stories, and a backpack full of ambition. But my confidence didn't always keep up. There was one class in particular, Advanced English Literature, that became a battlefield. The professor, a sharp, accomplished woman with a clipped tone, made it clear that excellence was the only currency she respected. One afternoon, we were assigned a personal essay titled, "Where I Come From." I wrote from my gut, about grandma's hands in my hair, about morning prayers and simple lunches, about being laughed at for smelling of mustard oil, and how I had learned to carry my roots like a crown. When she returned the graded essays a week later, she stopped at my desk. "You," she said, tapping the page, "have talent. But this," she gestured at the lines, "is small. Domestic. Sentimental." I blinked. "You're in the city now," she continued. "Time to think bigger. Global. Relevant." I went home that night and stared at my page, her red pen marks bleeding through the words I had written with so much love. I didn't call Grandma that night. I didn't know what to say. Instead, I rewrote the piece, more detached, more polished, more bland. I turned it in the next day. She gave it an A. But something felt hollow. A week later, I found myself alone in my tiny hostel room, holding the notebook Grandma had given me when I first left. I hadn't opened it in months. I flipped to the first story, about a girl who outwitted a lion by offering it parched rice and walking away with its pride. And beneath it, Grandma's words, "Never forget where your fire comes from." I stared at the sentence for a long time. Then I called her. I changed my essay, I confessed. She didn't scold. She listened. And then she said, "Let them tell you your stories are small. But remember, oceans are made of drops." That night, I stayed up late and wrote a new essay. Not for a grade. Not for a professor. But for myself, for her.